Dear romantics, cynics, and my cynical romantics, my name is Monice, and you are listening to the Romantic Cynic podcast. This is episode 4. Um, it's been a journey, and I think it's kind of cool that I have a month of podcasting. Been wanting to start this podcast for quite some time now, and now I'm not one of those people who was just talking about having a podcast. I actually have one. So today on that topic, I thought it would be great to discuss talkers versus doers in relationships. So without further ado, welcome to episode 4. With every one of my episodes, I always like to give some type of example of my experience in a relationship. This one, I want to talk about doers versus talkers. So, of course, I'll be referring quite a bit about my past relationship. It was 14 years long, so I have a lot of insight and there's a lot of history there and a lot of storytelling, and a lot of memories. Not all good. A few are good memories, but most of them are just complicated and not the greatest memories, but it's part of my history and it's part of who I am. So I will tend to share a lot about that relationship. So talkers versus doers, right? So with my ex-husband, in that relationship, he was very much a talker, not the type of person that liked doing things unless it benefited him somehow. There's things that I wanted to be able to experience with him, and he he could care less about anything that I really wanted to do. I mean, a great example is ballet. I love watching ballets live. I think I'm very attracted to artistic expression. So theater, ballet, music, anything like that, live music, things like that. So he's actually, he loved going to Oktoberfest. So we are now in the month of September. So Oktoberfest, and if you love Oktoberfest, they're fun to go to. I've been to a few, and so lots of beer drinking, lots of cider drinking, and lots of good food. So if you can go to one, I highly recommend it. So sorry, I digressed a little bit, but so that was just a good example of him wanting to do things. Now I'm going to go just a little bit further back and explain one particular thing that I really wanted to experience in that relationship with him. And well, there's quite a bit. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a brief background. So we dated. I hate saying dated. We dated for 12 years. 12 years. That's a long time for someone to figure out if they want to spend the rest of your life with that person. He just couldn't commit, didn't want to, the only time he decided to finally commit is because I left. And I give a little bit more of that story in a previous podcast, so you're more than welcome to listen to that. But with him, there's things in life I wanted to experience. Like, I wanted to have a family for one. Like, I wanted to have children. And with him, we early on, I'm not perfect by any means. And early on, I didn't really want children. I wasn't ready for them, especially in my 20s. Even when I was little, and as I got older into my teens, it's not having kids was not a priority. My priority was more of a career. I was career driven more than anything. But that was something that I had shared with him early on in our relationship. I just told him, I said, I'm not ready for kids, and I don't know if I want kids. And he was like, well, I want kids. And so, with that, and I mean, I can always, say that I don't want to say I'm completely at fault, but that should have been an indication to us that maybe we weren't compatible. And so, but we decided to stay together, and he had claimed that he loved me, so he wanted to, he would have been okay without having kids. Now, there was a situation that had transpired between us, that had basically altered our mindsets a little bit, where all of a sudden he didn't want to have children. Um, and I decided I wanted to have children. And so it was this back and forth debate between us. And again, reflecting right now, reflecting back, it should kind of, in a sense, I mean, if you really truly love that person, um, you make sacrifices, right? But if it's something you truly want, then maybe for the the sake, or at least maybe, for the purpose of each other individually, maybe the best thing that you can do at that point is, to kind of go your separate ways. Now, the problem with that, with my experience is we would have those conversations where it's like, I would like to have children, and he would just very just much like, oh well, not right now is not the time. Let's wait. Okay, well, we can wait. And so, I'm a relatively patient person. So I waited and I waited and I waited. And again, it was a lot of back and forth between him and I, where it's like, hey, like, I would like to have children. When can kind of we start? Oh, now it's not the time. And so again, this is back and forth for quite a few years. Um, you know, so around year 12, we ended up getting married. Um, and so I thought at that time, it's like, okay, well, maybe we can start a family now. And again, it was more of like, oh, yeah, we can eventually start one, but not right now. And so it was a lot of this talk. And so there was a lot of talk from him, and he gave me a lot of, he gave me false hope, in essence, and, continually dangling that carrot. Now, me being kind of naive in a sense and foolish, I should have said, okay, well, obviously we want different things, so maybe our relationship has kind of come to an end. But I never said that, and because again, I had hope, I had some false hope from him. Um, so when I had asked for a divorce, um, and when he and I discussed about like the reasons why I'm leaving, it was very interesting to have that conversation, because everything I had said as to the reason why I wanted a divorce and why I wanted to leave, it's not something that I had hid prior. Um, I always like to say there's no new information given. There's things that I had asked for, and there's things that I wanted to accomplish, and there's things that I wanted to experience, and again, it was a lot of back and forth that in the end, we just weren't compatible people. Um, and so we're thinking of those things, and one of them was having kids. And so when we were going through the divorce proceedings, and I mean, at least we're working towards, filing and everything like that, he had said, he's like, well, maybe he's like, I've been actually thinking about actually having kids. He's like, I was thinking that maybe we could start having kids in like December, and then the baby can be born in September of next year, the following year around my birthday. And I just sat there shocked, because it's like, you only thinking to myself, he only does things, he only is a doer unless I'm leaving, or unless our relationship is on the line. And, it was very telling. And I mean, some people would call that manipulation. And, in a sense, yes, it was very much manipulation on his part, thinking that, okay, well, I'm going to give her what she wants, but she's going to have to stay. And that was actually a very interesting conversation because I had, during that conversation, he basically told me, he's like, yeah, we can start a family, we can have kids, but you have to promise never to leave. No one can promise that, period. No one can promise that. And like, I don't want anyone to think like, oh, I'm, crapping on my ex-husband, because I'm not. He's not a bad person by any means. We were just incompatible people. And I'm not putting all the blame on him. It takes two people to work a relationship. And I definitely am not perfect by any means. We were just not the right fit for one another. And so I am giving you this example because it's based on doers versus talkers. And he was very much a talker in our relationship, and I'm very much a doer. And so, now that I've been on my own for a little bit, there's things in life that I've been working on accomplishing. So a perfect example is, I'm a recent grad student. So I got my master's degree recently. So that was something that I've been wanting to accomplish. Another perfect example is one of the places I've always wanted to go to was Boston. And so a year ago, I ended up going to Boston on my own for a few days and just experienced that. I've gone to multiple concerts this year. I'm I'm actually taking a pole dancing class. It's so much fun. I mean, guys and girls should definitely try this. It's a great exercise, but it's something that I've always wanted to do. And even in my relationship, I that was something that I wanted to do. I was very curious about it. I'm a very curious person. I like I ask a ton of questions, and I understand that there's so much in life that I would love to experience. And the thing is, I am doing it. I'm actually going out there and saying, hey, this is what I want to do, and I'm doing these things. And so we have to really really consider people that who talk, like give me the proof that you're you're a person who does things and someone that's not talking. I feel like a lot of us, even me during my relationship, I was kind of a talker, because I felt in that time I couldn't really do anything because of the restrictions I had in that relationship. And so, again, going back to thinking about, ask yourself the question, are you a doer or are you a talker? Um, Talkers are one of my pet peeves. And with that, giving someone false hope. I lived with a lot of false hope for, I can probably say maybe 10, 12 years in that relationship. Just consistently giving me false hope and kind of stringing me along. And I guess the point to all of this is, sometimes it can be scary to actually do the things that you want to set your mind to. Sometimes it can be exhilarating, and it should make you a little scared, or it should make you a little nervous. It's normal. These things are new. Now, making sure that there's nothing wrong with being a talker if that's what you choose to do. There's nothing wrong with being in a relationship with a talker if you are somewhat similar. Now, what is not okay is stringing someone along, giving someone a false sense of hope, saying that you're going to do things and then not doing that with the person. And so, you know, I I I'm not a talker. I'm a doer. And I feel like some of us are in relationships and even friendships, or they have family members that they're surrounded by talkers, and I would be very wary of those people. I think a big part of that is being disappointed. And I know in that relationship I was disappointed quite a lot. Now, again, I'm not blaming. I'm not 100% blaming the ex-husband. There is some accountability on my part there, because I kind of allowed it. I kind of allowed that slight manipulation. I kind of allowed that somewhat bullying and making to be felt guilty of wanting to accomplish things and wanting to do things. Now, I pre-warn, this is not just for the ladies, this is for the men as well. Um, take some caution and have really good conversations with someone that you're dating. And I would recommend having some of these uncomfortable conversations early on in a relationship, because I think it's important that you talk to one another. Communication is huge in any relationship. And when I say communication, I don't mean it in the sense of just talking back and forth. I literally mean like good quality communication. Now, if there are things that you want to achieve in a relationship and the other person just doesn't, ask yourself the question, are you willing to wait around and sacrifice your time and your energy on someone that might who's on the fence, or they say, well, I want the maybe I don't want this right now, but maybe I'll want it later on in the future. Now, you have to give yourself your own timeline. Like, when do you want to achieve these things? Sometimes it helps to, kind of write these down, or like say, okay, well, for example, I want to be married at 26 and I want to have children at 30, anything like that. Or I want to find the job that I want, by the time I'm 32 or whatever. Whatever you want to accomplish in life, write it down and see and kind of follow that. Now, you can either, and I hate to say it so bluntly, you can either waste your time. And I can say that because I completely wasted my time. I allowed someone to waste my time. Um, and again, I'm accountable for that. I was in the relationship too, and I didn't walk away. But at the same time, I was hoping that these are the things that he and I would be able to accomplish together. Now, let's go back to communication. Just let's talk about that. When I say good quality communication, I literally mean like sitting down and learning to communicate well. Now, I will say I have become a very good communicator in the last couple years. I've I communicate quite a bit via text. I'm not someone who likes to talk on the phone a lot. I don't really like doing that. But I like text messages. And so, um, communicating with family and friends and loved ones, um, you know, learning to communicate exceedingly well, and then rereading like what you're typing and thinking like, how can this be interpreted by the other person? Is it cynical? Does it sound mean? Does it sound loving? Okay, if it doesn't sound the way it probably should, rewrite it. The same things goes with communicating with your partner. Now, um, going back to talkers versus doers, right? And so I think it's critically important for all of us to say relatively early on. Now, when I say relatively early on, I don't mean like first date. I don't mean second date. I don't mean third date. I don't even mean a month or two or 6 months down the road. When I say that, when I say relatively early, it's whatever your comfort level is. Now, some people can be they can communicate all of this information on a first date. And if you do, that's fantastic if you're comfortable doing that. Now, don't force the conversation. And learn to read people's body language. That's actually that's important as well. If you can sense, the whole learn to read the room, if you can sense at least their energy, if it's negative or positive, you know, think about like what you're saying, telling the person, or what you're revealing to the person. And so if you're able to lay down and say, or write down, or however you want to do it, say, hey, these are the things I would like to accomplish in a relationship. Now that'll do a couple things. That will either scare the person off, which, maybe that's not a terrible thing because then you won't waste your time. Or someone will be open to having a conversation, and maybe you guys, maybe you two have similar dreams or similar aspirations, and then just go from there. So communication is super important in any relationship. And again, it goes back to talkers and doers, right? And so paying attention is another big key factor. So you want to pay attention. You don't want to be completely oblivious. I'm not saying, oh, you need to look for red flags. Now, red flags, green flags, whatever you want to call them, kind of drives me a little crazy, right? It really goes back to like what you're feeling, how you're feeling, and what your gut is telling you. What's your instinct telling you? Now, you know, learning to pay attention and see patterns in the little things that someone is doing for you. Now, if you see them, they say one thing, but they contradict it by an action. I know you've all heard the, action speaks louder than words, which is absolutely true. Paying enough attention and seeing if they are a doer or if they are a talker. And if you feel like, hey, this is not working, even if you have that inkling, one thing you can do is have that open dialogue with your partner, and communicate with one another. Now, I know the scariest part about relationships in general, especially if you've invested time and effort and maybe even money into that relationship. I think it's critically important to really sit down and ask yourself, is this worth it? That's big. Is it worth it? Is it worth your time? Is it worth the waiting? Is it worth X, Y, and Z? Now, I would also caution that, do you want your time wasted as well? Sometimes I am not a selfish person. At least I hope I'm not a selfish person by any means. Now, there are times, and I think it's very important to know this, or at least realize this, is sometimes it's important to be selfish for yourself. And when I say selfish, don't automatically think, oh, there's a negative connotation to it. Sometimes I believe that in relationships, and I can personally speak for myself on this, we lose ourselves. We lose a part of who we are. As a person, we lose our independence. We might lose our identity in a relationship. Now, be really careful with this, and things that you love doing, things that you're passionate about. If all of a sudden you feel like, hey, I can't do these things anymore because my partner is disagreeing with them or my partner doesn't like them. And all of a sudden you go from, I liked creating music, or I liked learning, or I was taking, some culinary classes, anything that you're passionate about, and all of a sudden you feel like you can't do it because your partner is having a problem with it. Pay attention to things like that. It's so important that in those moments you are a little bit selfish and you take time to take care of yourself. And you never want to lose who you are as a person in a relationship. You always want to make sure that you yourself are as an individual, and learn to respect yourself and learn and know to love yourself. I lost myself a little bit in that relationship because my partner just disagreed with me being so independent, being so being someone on my own, and being okay to kind of do things on my own as well. And so I wasn't selfish in terms of not taking care of Moniece. And so I know sometimes it sounds scary and very scary to again have open dialogue and have an open conversation. If your partner is just so digging their heels in and saying, no, that's not how it is, this is how it should be, maybe ask yourself this other question: is it time to move on? Now, another thing that I learned: just because you love someone doesn't necessarily mean that you're meant to be together. Just because you love someone doesn't mean you like them. I can honestly say that one point, I did love, my now ex-husband. The next question I had to ask myself a few times throughout our relationship and even afterwards was, did I like him? And I liked him enough, but he wasn't like my friend. He wasn't someone I can turn to. He wasn't someone I can rely on. Because a part of that was a lot of judgment. But foolishly me, again, I was very much a believer and someone who was hopeful and someone that felt like, okay, maybe this can work. I also think because I had invested so much time and energy in that relationship that I just didn't want to feel like, okay, that's it. That's all I got out of this. I know it can be hard and I know it could be scary, but at the end of the day, you really have to do what's right for you. And I mean that in a very sweet way to take care of yourself. But just some things to kind of keep in mind, in your own personal life. And question to ask is, one, are you good at communicator? Are you a fantastic communicator? Do you know how to communicate effectively well? Are you a doer or are you a talker? Are you passionate about things in life that you want to accomplish or that you want to continue to do, and you feel like you're in a relationship where you can't do those things anymore? Really sit down, really dig deep and say, is this relationship worth it? Is it worth it? If you can say, yes, it's 100% worth it, great for you. That is fantastic. I wish you all the best. If you have a slight hesitancy, maybe you need some time away by yourself and just critically think and emotionally find where you are emotionally. And of course, if there's the answer is like, no, I don't want this really, this is not worth it anymore. Be kind to yourself and be kind to your partner and move forward. And whether that be with your partner or without your partner. And hopefully this kind of opened your eyes a little bit to, what you as an individual would like to have, or what you as someone in a relationship would like to have. So love yourself and be kind to yourself. Love, as always, the romantic cynic.